Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's presentation of the Kirk webinar series entitled Campus Reuse Programs. My name is Larry Cook. I'm the Recycling Coordinator at the University of South Carolina, as well as Chair of the Kirk Board of Directors. I'll be your moderator today. For those of you not familiar with Kirk, the College and University Recycling Coalition is a member-based organization that works to grow collegiate recycling and waste reduction efforts by fostering technical information exchange and networking opportunities between the staff and student leaders implementing programs. Today's program is part of our free Kirk webinar series, which is designed to highlight innovative campus programs and provide trends and perspectives on a broad range of operational, educational, and other topics related to collegiate recycling and sustainable materials management. This is the first of 6 webinar programs for 2017. We'll share the schedule of upcoming webinars at the end of this program. Before we get started, I want to thank our sponsor for today's program, Warranties. I also want to recognize our partners, Keep America Beautiful and ASHE, the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education, for the planning and promotional support for the overall 2017 series. We have a few housekeeping notes to go over. If you have problems with your audio or video during the webinar, you can reach a live technician by calling GoToWebinar's customer support line at 800-263-6317. To avoid background noise, we've placed all but our panelists' lines on mute. We encourage you to submit questions at any time, however, by using the dashboard on the right side of your screen. Simply click the plus symbol where it says questions to type us a note, and we will read those out loud when we get to the end of the presentations. One final note, you can find the presentation slides on the Kirk website, and we'll have the recording available to stream by tomorrow. Okay, let's get started. Today's program is focused on reuse programs. While most colleges invest in recycling collections, programs to reuse discarded items are an important and increasingly popular way for campuses to reduce waste. In addition to keeping items out of the landfill, many schools use reuse programs as an opportunity to engage students and others about seeing the value of used items. Today we'll hear examples from 3 colleges and universities about initiatives to bring new life to discarded items. We'll open with a joint presentation from Stefania Fregosi with Temecula Community College in Oregon and Jessica Ramey from Marion County, Oregon, who will describe the town-gown relationship they developed to promote repair fair events for both the campus and nearby community. Next, we'll have Lynn King from UC Berkeley sharing an overview of their reuse store and other reuse initiatives. We'll wrap up the program with Daniel O'Connor from Warranties talking about their partnership with the University of Glasgow and other nearby universities to find new homes for items through Warranties' online reuse system. Stefania Fregosi has been the Sustainability Coordinator at Temecula Community College since 2012. She recently completed the college's first environmental stewardship plan and is finishing up Temecula's Carbon Action Plan. Stefania received her Master of Studies in Environmental Law from the Vermont Law School and her Bachelor of Arts from Oberlin College. Currently, she sits on ASHE's advisory board. Jessica Ramey is a waste reduction coordinator and maven of marketing at Marion County Environmental Services in Salem, Oregon. She's passionate about art, community, do-it-yourself projects, and enjoys inspiring others to rethink waste. Go ahead, Stefania and Jessica.
I'm Stefania. I'm the Sustainability Coordinator at Temecula Community College.
And I'm Jessica Ramey, a Waste Reduction Coordinator at Marion County.
So first I'm going to tell you a little bit about the college, and then we'll talk about the Repair Fair event that we did for Campus Sustainability Month. So Temecula Community College is located in Salem, Oregon. We're about an hour south of Portland, and we are a mid-sized community. I think we're the 2nd or 3rd largest city in the state. So community colleges are interesting places. I think if you're not familiar with them, you'd be surprised at the breadth of things that we do. So our total FTE is 11,130 students last year, but our headcount is 29,000 students. So we're very diverse. We have students enrolled a lot part-time. About to be a Hispanic serving institution, I believe. We have 7 campuses and centers that vary in focus, and we're part of a very large rural district. Our median student age is 22 at the moment, which has dropped a lot in recent years. It used to be 28, and we're a non-residential school. So things that we're offering here include an applied associate's transfer degree, and then our career and technical education programs run from fire protection to visual communications. We also do community ed, high school partnerships, and so our students are here for a lot of different reasons and studying a very wide variety of degrees. So our waste prevention program, it takes place, Oregon is a bottle bill state, and our waste prevention program started in the 1980s, and we have a vastly complicated collection system. It has been very organically driven, and so recycling is run by all sorts of units all across the college. We have 3 custodial services, 2 community partners, which are our local school programs for community transitions programs for disabled students, handle the collection at 2 of our locations. And we're collecting everything from cans to dental amalgam, so it's pretty varied.
So we came up with a repair fair program that we wanted to bring to Temecula, and it was really based on 4 key goals. So one of the goals is learn skills. We found there's a large gap of skill sets for younger students and the older population, and so we really wanted to help connect those populations together so they can learn together. The other thing is we wanted to reduce waste. We were always wanting to promote repair over replace, and this is a great opportunity to show that to the community. There's also a lot of experts and expert hobbyists, tinkerers in our community, so we really wanted to help connect those individuals. As well as the events are always free and open to the public, so and typically repairs are a lot cheaper than replacements, so people could save money. So let me just go over briefly how a repair fair starts and kind of works. So if you had something broken, say you have a bike tire that's broken, you would bring that to the repair fair, and we would typically promote that you're always bringing the replacement part if you knew what part needed to be replaced. Then the step 2 is you check in with someone. This is a picture of Stefania right here at the check-in process. So you check in, you tell the person what needed to be repaired. This ticket that you are filling out would be tracking pretty much with you throughout the whole entire process. And then we also ask them to fill out a photo release and liability release waiver. The next part is that we would then hook them up with a fixpert. So they would get to be able to be there. We'd ask that the participants stay there with the item that's getting repaired and learn throughout the process of how to step-by-step repair this item. And then once it was repaired or finished with the discussion with the fixpert, they'd bring it back to the final check-in counter. And if it was fixed, they got to ring the bell. Everyone was happy. Sometimes we had things, though, that were not repairable or things that were in the process of being repaired. And the fixpert always was great about saying, this is the part that needed to be replaced so that the person could go find it. So really, planning makes perfect for this program. The first one that we did with Temecula, we made sure that we planned 6 months in advance. After things got streamlined, we didn't need to practice so far in advance. And so we approached Temecula because they were, one, close to us. They had great parking and transportation. They're also really close to the street, so it was great visibility, as well as they had a good space, lots of tables and chairs. They had a student body that could help us organize this, as well as there was opportunity to provide food and really kind of a festival kind of atmosphere. One of the things, though, that was an obstacle was that Temecula is more of a school where people commute to it rather than having a residence hall or live-in population. So after you find the host, the next step was to find our fixperts. So fixperts are people who really know about repairing items. And these people we found through word of mouth. They were our community members. Some of them were master recyclers. Some of them were master gardeners that had already paid back hours that they needed to pay back. And so we really reached out to them. And we thought it would be hard at first, but actually once we started talking to people throughout the community, there were quite a few people that volunteered to help out. So we made sure that we connected with them through email. We have an email listserv that we connected with, as well as our first time meeting, we had a volunteer meeting to go over the expectations of the program. So after that, once we knew who our fixperts were, we knew what items we could offer. So we had everything from jewelry, computers, textiles, bikes, stringed instruments, small appliances, and even tool and knife sharpening. So they really helped us figure out what we could really offer to the community. And then we put it on our promotional materials. So people knew exactly what they could bring, and it would really help them brainstorm. Because we did the repair fair first at Temecula and then we did it outside of the campus, we had kind of different audiences that we need to advertise to. So we had a lot of different advertising. We had websites, flyers, newsletters, handbills, press releases. We have a radio show that we promoted it on. We even had a TV crew from Portland come and cover how to repair things. So that was really cool. But a lot of word of mouth of how to promote things and just chatting with the community to get it out there.
So I'm just going to do a rundown of our events. We started in the fall of 2015 and we had 28 tickets and 16 repairs and 3 items in process. And you can see as we moved on to different locations, we started picking up a few more people. So in the summer of 2016, there were 30 tickets and we were able to repair even more items. And then the one that we just did in January, we had 61 tickets, and it was a really cool event. We also invited a food truck, and we had a brewing company there selling things on site. So it really gave it a very festive atmosphere, and there were more people that came that were there to just kind of check it out and see what this was all about. One thing that I've noticed over time, too, is that now people are coming and they're starting to ask when the next event is going to be.
So we're already starting to plan our next event, but these are things to keep in mind when planning the event. You can make sure you host it next to or close to mass transit so people don't have to bike there or take a car there. They can take a bus, as well as I mentioned this before, possibly host it at a residence hall where students already live in. So if they do forget that evening that there's an activity, you could just tell them to run upstairs, go get their toaster and bring it downstairs. Having that accessibility is really helpful. Another option would be to host it at a hardware store or a place that already has these parts that need to be replaced. So it would be beneficial not only to a hardware store, but a bike store as well. We hosted it at a bike store, which was really easy, so somebody could purchase an item that needed to be replaced. We also found it was key that partners help spread the word, and it's kind of a, not only are they helping with the space, but we really asked them to help reach out to their customers too. And it was really awesome when we had the person who was actually bartending, she also knew how to play the ukulele. So she was making up songs, and it was a really festive event. So keeping it more lively and fun so people felt like they could kind of peruse the room and start up conversations was a really big benefit.
So at Temecula, you know, you've noticed that we've moved the event downtown. So our school, 100% of our students are commuters. They live an average of 12.5 miles from campus, so it's not easy to run home quickly and get something that you've forgotten. The college is outside of city limits. And on top of that, our whole city does not have nighttime, weekend public transit. So The good thing is that the event is still growing, and there's opportunities for sponsorship and opportunities at Temecula for peer-to-peer education because of the technical nature of some of our staff and students. So I think that we would be able to bring it back here as the event grows, just so that enough people know about it to really make it worth their while to come out here. So in general, we thought it would be a good idea to show you some of the ideas that you could have for college campuses. And some of the advantages. So I noticed that it must have been really important that we work towards zero waste goals, but because it's on here twice. But it's a great way to promote your campus recycling program and your waste reduction efforts, and to start conversations about the use of quality materials versus disposable goods. If you have a globalization program going on, it's a great way to tie into those discussions. And it's really awesome to be doing a collaborative town gown learning experience for both our students and our community partners. If you have any of these activities on campus, they'd be great to partner with. We do not currently, but there are craft centers and tool libraries and bike repair shops abundant on a lot of college campuses, and so they would be really great partners. We're all about promoting lifelong learning here at Temecula, and promoting confidence in manual skills is as important to us as it is to promote our intellectual skills. If your school has an end-of-the-year closeout program, it's also a good time to mention that. One thing I also wanted to say is that you can customize what you repair to what your students' needs are. I think that's really important. One thing that breaks a lot for me, for example, is headphones. You know, and if we had somebody that specialized in headphone repair, or even if they didn't, but we call them a headphone repair specialist, I bet we'd get people coming out in droves. Okay, so for future goals for the repair fair itself, we'd really like to be able to obtain a grant, increase outreach for youth and college students and seniors, and really bring the community together. We'd like to work towards making it bilingual, since it's not just Temecula that has a large Spanish-speaking population, but it's also the city. We'd love to be able to create a local repair guide, obtain sponsorship on that guide from local repair, hardware, craft stores, bike stores, etc. And maybe also provide a buyer's guide to reuse and repair. So over here we have some web resources that we recommend to people. Instructables is one, iFixit. They're great sources for finding instructions on how to repair things, as well as YouTube. And then the other two are promotions for our events. So we have the Repair Fair and Share if you want to see more about what we did and hear more about what we did. We had an interview on KMUZ radio recently. So that's it. Let me know if you have any questions.
Great. Thanks so much, Stefania and Jessica. We are going to hold questions for right now and move on to a poll question for the audience. And that question is, it'll come up on the screen here in a second. What type of reuse programs does your campus have? And check all that apply: office supply exchange, reuse surplus property store, repair fair, end of the year move out collection, or exchange or swap events. So go ahead and we'll give you a little bit of time to put in your answer. While we're doing that, just a quick question for Steph and Jessica. Most of what you're getting fixed at the repair fairs are personal items. Have you had any success with fixing stuff, or do staff members participate with the college's own equipment or things?
No, I think our facilities and operations department has a pretty good handle on fixing a lot of stuff. So they're not bringing stuff, although, you know, if those guys had more free time, I'd love to see them at the repair fair because they do have so much expertise and knowledge. We are getting personal items, and we do get some really odd things. I think one of them was a chop saw. Yeah. So, but it's great that we are able to fix those even just using community folks.
Okay, great. Let's see if we've got results for the poll question. Across the board, most of us have the end-of-year move-out collections, a little less than half with office supply exchanges, a little more than half with reused surplus property stores, less repair fair. So hopefully we all got some great information on that from the last presentation. Moving on, our next presenter is Lynn King, who is manager of Cal Zero Waste at UC Berkeley. Lynn managed the R4 recycling program at UC Davis for 15 years and Cal Zero Waste at UC Berkeley for the past 6 years. He is chair of the newly created Zero Waste College and University Technical Committee under the GBCI Zero Waste program and on the board of the California Collegiate Recycling Council under the California Resource Recovery Association. He has also served on the board of the College and University Recycling Coalition, Kirk, and California Resource Recovery Association. Go ahead, Lynn.
Okay, thanks, Larry. Waiting for the slide deck to come up. So when the slides come up, let me just give a brief overview of UC Berkeley. So the University of California does have a zero waste goal by 2020, and that was for all our 9 campuses, and it's established about 15 years ago, and we are currently getting very close to it. So reuse is one of our main programs that we utilize. It is highest end on our hierarchy. A lot of people think of recycling, but reuse is one of the biggest ones we want to tackle in trying to reduce and get down to zero waste. So for Berkeley, just most folks know, but just as we're the #1 public university in the country and the #4 globally. So I would love to have Berkeley as also the #1 zero waste university. So we're kind of moving towards that goal in coordination with the university. We are very urban. We're smack in the middle of the city of Berkeley, and the numbers, it's actually nice to see the first presentation because we're almost the exact opposite. We're very urban, large campus. We have about 27,000 students, undergrad, and another 10,400 graduate students. So pretty sizable, large college. In addition to that, we have about 14,000 staff and about 9,000 FTE, about 1,500 faculty. So it is a quite big campus with us generating a lot of materials. And the one thing coming from University of California, Davis to Berkeley is that there was a really kind of a student-run reuse club program when I got here. And I'll go through a little bit through kind of the transition of what was running here on the campus and then what ended up happening later on. Slides. Okay, try to advance them. Oops, okay, hold on. I'm trying to advance the slides. So I'm having difficulty advancing. Can someone advance to the next slide for me? Sorry. Okay, I'll hopefully. Okay, I'm going to keep talking because I can't seem to advance the slides. Okay, so anyway, so let me talk about the first one, which is, I was mentioning earlier that if we can, the idea, okay, here we go, sorry. Okay, thank you. So the 3 things that, there are lots of other reuse projects, but the 3 I'm going to talk about today. One is regarding our reuse stations. The second one is something we had planned on when we redid our student union, so we were able to get in a reuse store. And the last part I'm going to talk about today is the Refreshing Refills campaign, which we just got a partnership with Brita, so we'll be talking about that. Okay, next slide. So the reuse system, how it was started, the students had a volunteer program where they picked materials up from our office cleanouts, departments, residence halls, where they did some move-outs. And originally it started out pretty well. It was all volunteer-based, and they picked materials up, and then they transported them to about 20 various stations. So the stations, unfortunately, at that point were just people who had pulled out a bookshelf at a department, and then people just started throwing all types of reusables in it, and the students would keep it somewhat organized and then would stock it with other departments' materials. The problem is most of you know with students-run programs that they have sometimes great intentions, but it wasn't really well connected with our building managers. So lots of times the building managers got very upset about how it looked, and sometimes the reuse donation systems got really kind of messed up, and building managers weren't very happy with them. So what we had to do when we started was also the decrease in volunteers kind of made that difficult. So we kind of revamped the system a little bit with a lot of our building managers' expertise. So most of them took it in-house. So they ended up managing each system. And then we took it to the next level, which we'll show you in a little bit of how we ended up creating the new system. So the students basically now are still involved in stocking each of these stations, which I'll show you. But what we did was we integrated it with our surplus property group and our movers. So instead of having students who were having to pick things up at the departments and sometimes being able to and sometimes not being able to, it's very inconsistent, we ended up having the movers from our overstock and surplus property department who had to move departments anyway, and they were integrated into the process. And it's been very popular now, being that if a department was moving, they would basically load up boxes of surplus equipment, donations, materials, and then our surplus property folks would take that and bring it over to their warehouse, and then we would send our staff over to divide that up and then restock it. Next slide. So this is somewhat of our stock room. So we were able to have various areas where we can put our materials. So once they've collected the materials and we were able to sort through it, we were able to hold it in the sorting area. This is actually a little room under the garage. So this is a good intermediate site that we were able to get a loan as far as space. So we were able to create a lot of different sections and inventory and keep them organized and be able to distribute out to the campus. Okay, next slide. So donations, what are popular? So we do want to make sure that we get donations that are reusable. A lot of folks didn't really, in the beginning program, I mean, we were getting vases and you know, electronics and chairs, and so it became really more of a surplus property, which is why that has also worked out really well in that any of the other items that really are not donation items, we are able to just either send it to our overstock and surplus for sales. So we generally get what students want and also what offices want. So these are the typical donations that we are able to sort out of their materials and then redistribute. Okay, next. So this is an example of one of our reuse stations that we redid. If those of you want to take a guess at what it used to be, this actually used to be a phone booth that we have all over campus. So Berkeley is a very old campus, and we do have phone booth stations and buildings still. So we were able to get a grant with our Chancellor Sustainability Committee, and they gave us funds to redo the phone booth. So in the past, when the students were running the station, it actually still did look like a phone booth, and they just were putting items inside the phone booth. So we worked with the building manager who was very unhappy at the moment, who was ready to pull the whole project, and we said, look, what if we put some money into this and made it look nice? And so we actually redid the finishings on it. We put in shelving for the units, so it actually looked like a reuse station, and information and board, this is what's acceptable. The other difference what we made was that people used to use it to put their donation items in it, which made it really cluttered and hard to organize. So we've actually asked people not to donate it that way. So as I said, using our overstock and surplus program, that's the donation system, and the reuse station is actually for people to take materials out, and it looks a lot neater and better for that way. So at this point, the students are organizing these and they're restocking it, and it works out a lot better where they're not in the distribution system. So, and then it gets a lot of use. A lot of our students, I mean, in fact, I don't think we can fill it up fast enough. As soon as we fill it up, I think about the next day, it's almost depleted. So we're continuously having to fill the station, but that's a good part about our reuse system, that it's working as a resource. So, next. So this is the other thing. So the past, the reuse students, they were transporting all their items via backpack. They would come load up their backpacks and walk around campus and to fill the various stations. So we thought, you know what, although that was great, but we needed something a lot more and quicker. So we, through the Green Initiative Fund, which we have on campus, which is another great opportunity for us, is that the students end up quote-unquote taxing themselves and paying into a fund, and then we are able to apply for grants. So this is one of the things that we've been playing with, is it's called a truck trike, and we've been playing with it. It's a hybrid electric / human-powered bike, and so we've purchased it through the grant in order for the students to use to transport boxes of reusables. So they would basically take it out of that room that you saw earlier and then ride it to the station and then restock it. Next slide. So here's the other thing that we've done, which I think is a great next step, is having a physical store. So when our union was rebuilt, coming from the UC Davis model, they actually redid a thrift store there. So at Berkeley, we worked a lot with the students and the union to say, hey, when we redo it, could we have some space to have it as a reuse store? And whereas in the past, the students used to have to reserve an area in the courtyard area outside and lay down a tarp, now we actually have a physical location for a store. And this has been great. The students have refocused their attention also to the store to have different shifts that they're going to work. And students are bringing their items to the store to donate. They're also able to trade and buy materials, pick up reusables. So this has worked out really well for us. Next slide. So the difference in the reuse store is that the idea is that instead of donating all our materials to Goodwill or Salvation Army or any of the donation items, is that, or instead of having it go to the landfill, which we really don't want, is that it ends up staying on campus and our students can use it as a resource to bring their materials, and it doesn't even have to go off campus. Next slide. So here's a little bit of the numbers. It's not a huge bunch, I mean, compared to my overall landfill numbers. But again, my strategy at this point, I think with the campus and our zero waste goals, is that whatever we do in reuse is there to educate and outreach and promote the best use of our resources, that before you even recycle it or compost it, that really the reuse needs to be redone and then looked at instead of you buying something else. So these are just a few of the numbers that we've done as far as the redistribution of materials, and that's the reuse station I showed earlier. Next slide. So here's a picture of the store. So since opening, it's actually done a lot better. We had a kind of a soft start, and now it's gone really more traffic where the store is. So the donations have increased by 44%, and they've moved about 1,400 clothing items. And one of the things that we're trying to do is keep it fresh, so that clothes that don't move, that we get other clothes in there. And we're just about to come up with Move Out again, so we're hoping to do the clothing line and to refresh it again. Okay, next slide. Okay, we have reader giveaways, so the store does collect those, and then we go out to the courtyard and then during school beginning, and they are able to do some distributions of the readers. And then, as I said, we do residence hall move out collections as well. Next. So the last part I'm going to talk about is most folks don't really kind of think about this, and when we started this campaign with Brita, you know, folks are like, well, how is that reuse? Well, part of it is, you know, our students had a huge campaign against the single-use water bottles. So even though folks are saying, well, that's recyclable, why do you even worry about it? Again, I think the idea is to move to more of a thoughtful process of upping in the hierarchy of reuse. So we were really happy. Brita came and said that we would be happy to help with your refills campaign. So next slide. So they offered and provided about 8,500 of their new bottles for all our incoming freshmen. So we distributed, the partnership happened a little bit late, so we started in the fall, but we distributed it during the winter break. So all our new freshmen coming back from winter got one of these bottles in every one of their rooms. And it's really been a sight to see, because now when I walk around campus, I can see these bottles everywhere. And the idea is that hopefully when they're using these, they're not having to buy a water bottle that's disposable, recyclable, and a lot of it doesn't get recycled. But as I said, it's part of it where we don't have to generate it in the first place. The water in our area is actually doesn't need to be filtered, but we gave the students an option. The filter is there. As I said, the students are still opting to buy water bottles, the disposable ones. So now with this as a filtered, they can fill it up all over campus. We have refill stations, and then they can still get the functionality of a filtered water if they decide they want to do that. Next slide. The other thing we've done is we've given away mugs and bottles and reusable bottles a lot, but we've never really had a metric or able to have people track their refills. So we're partnering with this company called Companion. They also make mugs, so their mugs have these little stickers on it. We were able to buy stickers from them separately, and the idea is that you can actually track your own refills. And then part of the campaign and incentives is that as you're tracking your refills, we can also provide some incentives by prizes and tell you, you know, great job, keep going, and to provide some information while they're able to do it as an app. Next slide. So part of the Refreshing Refills, I want to just note you guys, most campuses have some of these programs, but we've linked our refills program with also not just, you know, refilling your mugs and bottles, is that we're looking at refilling using pens. So refillable pens is another one. We have refillable dry erase markers that we're promoting. And then typically the mugs, the bags, and we have a reusable spork that we also give out. So that's all part of the reuse. Next slide. This is just an example. We're tabling, giving some of the water bottles away from Brita, and we've done some athletic events. This is our zero waste basketball event that we're promoting. So we're really just promoting reuse as well, in addition to recycling and composting. Next slide. So we were doing this with the housing folks, and part of their campaign is we've put little posters out with the residential sustainability program at our housing areas. And Brita and us are still partnering on seeing how we can create more information and outreach for folks to keep using their bottles. So one of the things we're looking at doing, which Brita sponsored, is we're going to get a bike and then have people make sure they reuse the app and keep, you know, registering that they're refills, so we can start tracking them, and then we'll also be able to provide them information. So here's just one of the outreach posters that we did. Next. Okay, that's the end of my presentation, so I guess we're off to the next poll.
Thanks so much, Lynn. That's a very great and comprehensive program. We've got some great questions coming in for you that we'll address at the end of the webinar, but let's go ahead and move on to our second polling question. So the second polling question is, who administers reuse programs on your campus? So again, check all that apply, the sustainability office, a student group or student government, property department, recycling or zero waste office, or other. And while we're waiting on that results, let's give you one question, Lynn. One of the challenges that the folks at in our first presentation mentioned is the distance that students live from campus. You mentioned that the Brita bottles were distributed to new freshmen in residence halls. What kinds of outreach for reuse are you doing for off-campus students?
So that's actually our benefit. Most of our students are on campus. They're not on campus or in the city of Berkeley. And then, I was mentioning earlier, there is a program called the Residential Sustainability Program, and it's actually run by one of our resident directors. So we've actively worked with them to try to keep promotions and education. They put on programs with each of our residence halls. So again, they are close in proximity to the campus. They're not right on campus, but we have been able to use their network through their resident directors and resident advisors to put on programs in conjunction and partnership with them to promote these programs. They also, let me throw this in, they also have their own reuse stations at each of the locations for their housing.
Okay. So let's see if we've got the poll results up. Okay, so a diversity of administration for reuse programs all across the board. Interesting to see. Let's move on to our third presenter, Daniel O'Connor from Warpit. Daniel used to work as a waste manager at Newcastle University. In 2011, he decided to do something about surplus assets being put in the dumpster. He set up an online reuse platform, Warpit, specifically aimed at increasing reuse on college campuses. Daniel's vision is to make reuse mainstream in large organizations. Warpit services over 50% of the main UK universities and is now moving into the US market. Go ahead, Daniel.
Hey guys, Daniel here. I hope you're well. Thanks for having me. It's been a long day. I was up this morning, 5:30 a.m. my time, speaking to the University of Tasmania, and now I'm late into the night speaking to you guys, so I really appreciate your time. I'm going to talk about one of our customers, the University of Glasgow, and I'm going to talk about their successes and their failures and learning points, so that hopefully you can learn from this presentation. This is all about collaborating on reuse within the university and between universities and other organisations. I'm trying to get the slide to move on, but I cannot. Can somebody do that for me? I can't actually see the button. Great. Thank you very much. So, what I'm going to talk about for the next 15 minutes or 14 minutes now is organisational reuse, that is across the estate, across the campus, and I'm talking about the operational side of things. Okay, so it's assets that are being used for the day-to-day operations of the organisation. So I'm going to talk at an organisational level, but also at a city level as well. Okay, so we're going to review the University of Glasgow case study, and as I said, we're going to focus on operations. By the way, there's a video of Selena Woolcott, who's the director of sustainability at Glasgow. There's a video you can view on YouTube where she's actually talking about this as well. Move forward, please. Great. So, I'm a waste manager. I used to be a waste manager on a university campus, and you know, I used to see this sort of scenario most days on my campus. You might see the same thing, you might not. But generally within a dumpster, or we call them skips in the UK, in a dumpster, you know, there'd be reusable products that are perfectly normal, perfectly functional. And by the time they hit the skip or the dumpster, you know, it's too late, the opportunity's gone. Even if they're in the yard, ready to go in the dumpster, the opportunity is probably gone because they might get wet or they might get damaged. And you know, if you go around your campus and you see reusable items on loading bays, you know, these loading bays that the logistics or the portering team use, you know, those assets are generally on the way to a dumpster as well. So it's probably too late then as well. So I used to see this every day, and I thought, you know, I need to do something about it. And it was really perverse because there'd be, in this, like for this photo, there'd be a building doing a building clearance, and assets would be getting thrown out, And somebody would phone me up and go, hey Daniel, you know, you're the waste manager, can you get rid of these task chairs for me? And I'd say, well, yes, of course. I'll find some homes for them. And where are they and what's the time scale? And I'd get a response, well, look, I've put them outside already, so you know they're your problem now. And so that would make me angry. But also, if we could move forward a slide, I'd also see in the same building sometimes a delivery of new operators' chairs, and in that building there'd be 3 or 4 departments, and nobody would be talking to each other about what they were buying and what they were disposing of. So there was these silos in the departments where, you know, nobody knew what was going on, and in many cases something that one department was disposing of, another department was buying. So in the UK, you know, we're kind of limited by space a bit more than you guys, and not so much in the cities, but definitely out of the cities. And so what we've concentrated on in the UK is making matches of assets from the disposer of the recipient directly without going into any storeroom. So I'm going to talk about the Glasgow case study now. And Glasgow is a city-based university. It has 4,000 staff, and it has about 17,000 students. So you'll be able to get a bit of perception on the scale of things there. What's interesting about Glasgow is there's 4 universities in the same square mile. There's also a very large hospital with 35,000 staff, and there's also a very large municipal council with 35,000 staff. So that's quite a dense, in that 1 mile square, there's quite a dense population of workers in what we call the public sector in the UK, and they've all got the same issues around surplus stores. So I'm going to tell you about the University of Glasgow now. So we are the supplier of a software product to this university, and the University of Glasgow, they had, using our software, they set up an internal marketplace in their organization. And when I say internal marketplace, you know, I'm talking about something kind of like eBay or Amazon, or something like that, where staff would log in, and if they were looking for, let's say, a cabinet, they would search for a cabinet and they could find a match for that need across the campus. Now, Glasgow also had a small storage area, which was full to the brim of old stock, which had either got, well, which probably on the cusp of being not reusable because it had been stored for so long. So they used our platform to redistribute those assets internally, and they also did a lot of gifting to not-for-profits via our platform as well, and other institutions in the city. Now that particular activity went very well, and it gave them a lot of evidence to believe that well, not only was reuse the right thing to do, but that reuse had a very strong business case, because it avoided procurement of new items, it avoided waste charges, and it also took the pressure off the store area. And as part of that project, with the evidence from the reuse activities with regards to financial savings and carbon and waste, they then approached the other big players in the city. And the other big players in the city were made up of, as I said, 4 universities, a very large council, a very large hospital, and probably about 300 not-for-profits, and another 300 schools. So that's really interesting because, and I always say this, the enemy of reuse is movement. You know, you want, just like Lynn Kin says at Berkeley, you know, you want to keep those assets, if not on the same estate or the same campus, you at least want to keep it local, you know. So what these big players then did was they entered into an official partnership where they were all trading on our system internally, and anything that wasn't required internally was then sent to a central store where all of those big players could access the surplus assets in that central store. And all of these big players in the city, they used the evidence from the initial project to then fund a logistics provider who then did all of the transport across the city. And as far as we know, I think this is probably a unique situation. So just to go over that a little bit again, there's an internal marketplace where staff trade internally, and the staff in Glasgow, how they use this marketplace, it's for the day-to-day churn of any asset on the estate. So it might be something as low value as a stapler, but it might be something as high value as some lab technology or some real high-end kit. So they use this internal marketplace for all staff to trade goods. Now, it's presented like this in a marketplace view, okay? And if those assets aren't required internally, in the first instance, they go into the store, okay, where they can be viewed again online. And if they aren't required in the store, they can link up with local partners and trade across organizational boundaries in the city, okay? Now, the big players, we call that priority 2. Internal is priority 1. The big players are priority 2. But there's always items drifting out the bottom. What we say on the system, about 50% goes internal, 30 to 40 is external, and there's 10 to 20% doesn't find a home. But that's a general overview of the whole system, not just the Glasgow case study, the whole system. So some of the highlights. Now I'm going to have to do some metric conversions here because you guys, we do 2 different weight systems. So 66 tons. That's 66,000 kilograms. For you guys, I don't know how to exchange that into pounds. I'm sorry, I should have done that before I set away here. But you can see the benefits just to the University of Glasgow. This is how much they've saved internally by reusing and setting up the strategic program over the last couple of years. Okay, so significant savings. Now, as a group, the whole of the city. Okay, so we're talking about all those big players as well. This is their combined savings across the board. So obviously, prior to this system, these assets were either going to landfill, they were going to energy from waste. There might have been a bit of ad hoc reuse, but because everybody's on the same system, it tracks it all, and then they can start to report on the benefits. And then when you report on the benefits, you get this nice positive feedback where more staff participate, senior management get really interested, and you get more resources put into reuse. Now, the key lessons from the University of Glasgow, okay, and there are successes and there are failures in here. So, one of the key lessons was to start small and grow from that point, and that's all to do with risk aversion and making sure that nothing untoward happens that would undermine the scheme. So you start small and you demonstrate the business advantages. Okay, now on your reuse program, there'll be some way of recording the transactions. If you can apply a value to those transactions, that's when you can start building a business case to then grow the scheme and take on more size and push it out further. So demonstrate the business advantages. That makes it a much easier sell. First of all, internally to your committees and your governance structure, but then externally to the city partners. If one organization has done well, the city partners will also think, well, look, if they can do it, we can do it. Okay. Another key lesson which Selena talks about is they had quite a strong existing network in the city of sustainability professionals. So you guys probably have the same in your city or region where, the sustainability people or the zero waste people might get together in a city or a region regularly, let's say every quarter, and they'll talk about their successes and their failures together so that you can all grow. Well, one of the things in Glasgow that happened was, they were talking about Warbit, and this program spread by word of mouth in their existing networks. And that's when they started to explore this external exchange with the other parties. Now, one of the big hold-ups and one of the big well, it wasn't a fail, but it certainly put the project at risk. It was the challenge around the legal issues of donating assets to other parties. Now, there is an issue of donating assets around warranties and liabilities and that sort of thing. So you must involve your legal team right from the start. If you involve them from the start, they're going to be much more bought in, and they're going to be much more likely to give you a solution. If you bring them in later on, then they're going to be kind of a bit upset that you didn't involve them at the start. So it's less likely it's going to be successful. So get them in at the start. Another key lesson from Glasgow was when the big players pooled their resources and did the business case to get group storage, that then caused a domino effect. So insofar as, they could all share this one storage rather than all having little bits of storage all over the city. And also with regards to group logistics, so there's two lessons here, okay? If you're going to engage somebody or a supplier to do group logistics, you need to get them on the lowest cost possible. That's an obvious one probably. And another thing is, you really need to approach somebody who knows the campuses of each of the partners or knows the estate of each of the partners. That makes it much easier as well. So just starting to wrap up here and to give you some take-home tips where you might be able to go back to your office and start to explore a similar program. Take-home tip number one: get in touch with your equivalent in these other organisations across the city or the region, in public sector and private sector. Sustainability officers, waste officers, waste managers, surplus property managers, that sort of thing, and talk to them about. You all share the same issues around surplus assets. Some are more ahead than others. So there's a nice information sharing going on there, just like this webinar. But you can share these problems, and you can start to explore and find out. Actually, you've all got the same problem. Can we do a group solution? Take-home tip number two. This project isn't necessarily about zero waste. It's not necessarily about sustainability. It's about resilience, and it's about making use of existing assets and putting them to work. So you can consider framing it around other issues that might be important in your city or region. Sorry, that's my timer to tell me it's 15 minutes. But yeah, you might want to frame this, instead of framing it around zero waste or sustainability, depending on the city objectives. The city objectives kind of like lead the way of development for the city for the next 5 to 10 years. So you want to frame it around whatever is being discussed in your city, whatever the main objectives are. Might be sharing economy, could be smart city, that's a huge one at the minute. Might be resilience, especially in those areas that are getting hit by storms and flooding. Resilience is massive. And of course, your circular economy is growing all the time as well. That's me. I'm Daniel O'Connor. I'm the head of customer happiness at Warbit, and you can get in touch with me if you like on that email address. And you can also, it's worth mentioning, you can also download a case study from the University of Glasgow straight off the Kirk website. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks so much, Daniel. We have some great questions coming in and plenty of time to address them. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to our first presenters, Jessica and Stefania. We had a question about the Fixperts, and you kind of covered this a little bit, but have you recommended that they bring some of the repair items? I know you talked a little bit about maybe focusing on a hardware store so that they would be available for purchase, but can you talk a little bit more about that, the source of the materials to perform the repairs?
That is an excellent question. So yes, we ask that our Fixperts bring any tools that they think are needed for those things to repair. And typically, we'll have 7 different tables with seven different categories. So that Fixpert knows that they're going to be fixing stringed instruments, so they would be bringing whatever they need to engage in those repairs. So somebody who's a seamstress, she might just do handwork. She might do machine sewing, so she'll bring her sewing machine. but they're asked to bring those tools. We might later start providing some of the things. I do typically supply some things like thread, and we often do follow-up surveys with our experts to see what we can, help provide and really help support them in the fixing.
Great. And this was not the focus of your presentation, but just out of curiosity, if you could answer, and it may not be your area, but what about the surplus property, kind of more what Lynn and Daniel were touching on? Can you describe a little bit of how that's handled at Temecula?
Yeah, our surplus property program at the moment, we do have one. We collect a lot of things out of buildings. We also have a deconstruction process, which is somewhat separate. I think only about 15% of what comes out of the college is actually considered reusable for various reasons within the college. In terms of getting it out, some of it goes to state surplus. So we have a contract with a state of Oregon where sometimes we sell them stuff. Stuff goes on to gov deals, and the rest of it gets either recycled or thrown away depending on whether or not we're able to do that. And I'd like to be at a point where we could track that better. We really need a better database and computer system so we know what we've done, but that effort has not come to the top yet.
Well, just another impromptu pitch for our sponsor at Warp It, but it might be worth talking to Daniel if what he was talking about sounds pertinent. But on that topic of state property, and Lynn, if you can maybe address this too, here at South Carolina, we've run into some issues with reuse of items that were purchased with state funds and then how you distribute them. And so specifically with your office supplies in the reuse centers, I noticed that that's open to students, faculty, staff. Have you run into any issues at the state level for how you're disposing of property purchased with state funds?
Okay, so thanks, Larry, for bringing that up. So that is actually a very important question. We used to have this very outdated policy with reuse where, because it is purchased with state dollars, that we technically could not give it away. We had to actually throw items away in order not to, quote-unquote, benefit others with state purchased property. Since then, a few years ago, that policy has been rewritten, and it allows us to actually be able to donate and provide even giveaways if the item is deemed as a material that has no longer have value for us to sell, and also that it would actually cost us more money to throw away. So that's actually been a huge bonus from our sustainability guidelines that made that policy revision. So in fact, at this point, we keep raising the levels of our purchasing inventory dollar amounts. So things like laptops actually are no longer even inventorial items because they're so cheap these days. So there's going to be, for us, again, working closely with surplus property, that they deem whatever items are going to be of value, and then whatever does end up falling out from that level. So items such as office supplies and office materials, those type of items where they do not claim as more value, like they can't resell, then we are able to donate those back to either the campus departments or students or even the community.
Great. So Daniel touched on this a little bit, but Lynn, getting back to you, you showed kind of the numbers that you've been able to displace in the reuse programs, but do you have a more formal kind of ROI on the value of having a reuse store?
So for reuse, that's actually a good question. I completely encourage the students to keep measuring. As I said, a lot of the numbers that I have today in today's presentation, the ones that are distributed that actually had pounds is using a scale. So we purchased a kind of a not your bathroom scale, which we started, but we actually have a more of an industrial type of scale where you can weigh boxes. So everything that we collect and then gets redistributed, I have the students weigh those before it goes back out. So we actually have really good numbers. From the store, we're getting better at it. So they've been counting as far as the number of pieces of items. So not by weight quite yet, but at least we can start with the pieces of clothing that goes in and out. And it really has to, again, we've been working with them on seeing if we operate more of a store of having, monies that they are generating, and they're actually they're in the black. So they're operating really well as far as funds of people buying materials from the store. So yeah, as much numbers as you can have. Reuse is a hard and reduction is hard to calculate sometimes, but as much as you can do to do that, it justifies the diversion for reaching zero waste.
Great, and one more for you, Lynn, and then we'll move back on to the other panelists. One of the biggest struggles when you're looking at promoting your program is what kind of giveaway items that you give away, but even it's a much bigger problem across campus where apartment complexes or whatever give away something that the students don't want. I'm sure you get a lot of that material in the reuse store. Have you ever seen some of your stuff come back through the store?
Typically, so we are very picky about our giveaways. They actually have to earn it. So we don't just hand it out, except for the new Brita bottles, as I said. Those are given to every one of our students, and we have not seen those come back. We've actually, the funny part is we've actually seen that on the secondary market, because those things, I mean, I think the main takeaway is you want to give away a product that people value and hard to earn. So they don't want to give it away or just donate it at the end because they find that it was a prize that they got and they don't want to get rid of it. So all our outreach materials or materials that we tend to provide is promotional, such as the spork I was talking to. It's everyone's actually looking for. It's like, oh, how do I get one of those? And once they get it, they don't want to get rid of it. So that's kind of the idea, is to whatever promotional materials and outreach that you buy, make it of value and something that will last. Great.
Getting back to Jessica and Stefania, can you talk a little bit more, you talked a little bit about setting up the reuse fairs, but just kind of the amount of time that it takes, I mean, how long the event lasts, I guess is the question.
So usually they last about 2 hours. The last one we had was 3. And we make sure we also feed our volunteers. We ask them to be there earlier, typically because it's dinner time. We like to feed them and kind of chat with them a little bit before it starts. And then we typically then open it up and then have some food available for other people to nibble on throughout the event.
Yeah, so we tend to make it an evening and a weekday, so it's after work or after school activities would start. So that, and then it tends to be 2 hours. But the last one was a Saturday. Was 3 hours on a Saturday, so that was good too.
We also have an issue. We always try to schedule it around our mass transit, and we don't have late evening or weekend bus service, so it makes our community members getting there to and from a little difficult. So we try to be a little thoughtful about that.
Great. We had a question that I'm just going to kind of throw out to the panel. We're talking about the surge in creating maker spaces, and Daniel mentioned that maybe 10 to 20% perhaps of the material that he's using doesn't find a home readily, and so there always seems to be some residual. And has anybody considered an event that would, whether it's basically an upcycling competition to create a new use for something that wouldn't necessarily have a reuse option in the more typical sense?
So one thing that we've had here to promote upcycling, we had a competition a couple of years ago. It was a trash and show. So people were making upcycled fashion out of everything imaginable. We had one here. There's been one downtown that was held by a different group that Jessica was involved with. And we also had a drag one a year or two ago, too.
And I was also part of a nonprofit creative reuse center, and we did exactly that. Once a month, we would have an item that we had excess donations of. So one time it was slide carousels, or like a tuna can or random things like that. And then we'd have artists participate, and then we would put it out on social media to also get promotion of creative reuse. And that was really popular.
Great.
I could comment on that as well.
Sure.
I'm sure you guys have. I mean, Stefania already mentioned about having internal skills to be able to refurbish and repair items. But what we see a lot of is, because office style work changes over the years. You know, like everyone at the minute is in the UK anyway is being is going into smaller offices, so they're squeezing more people into smaller and smaller offices. So that means the desk furniture changes a lot. So what we see a lot of is in our customers, as well as suppliers to the universities, they will refurbish task chairs. They'll put a new gas lift in, they'll put new wheels on, and they'll actually sell those chairs back to the university with a warranty for 70% cheaper than the actual buying new. And they'll also remodel the desks as well. I'm sure this might go on in the States as well, but that's a growing sector where we've got these large 1800mm desks, these big corner desks. You might have them over there as well, but they're now being chopped down to like 1 meter or 1200mm to much smaller desks. So they're not being thrown out, but they're being remodeled, and the tops are being remodeled as well.
Great. Another question about the Fixperts. I guess it seems like from your presentation that you kind of seek them out, but is there an application process if somebody hears about it, and how do you kind of screen that those folks can actually do what you want them to do?
That's another great question. We do screen them. I typically have just a conversation with them, as well as there's typically a mandatory meeting that we ask our volunteers to go to. However, we have had quite a few quirky Fixperts volunteer, and it's a learning process for us. I think having, agreeing upon, anti-discrimination and things like that would be really helpful, and having these conversations ahead of time. So we are kind of drafting that right now, what our expectations for, just typical, it's just typical communications with people. I think that's, guest interactions. I think that for us has been a little tricky as of late. So we are working on that.
Great. Back to you, Lynn, for your students who are moving some of this stuff around campus. What kinds of training have you had to do with them to mitigate liability for hurting themselves while they're doing that?
Okay, well, hopefully there's no injury. We have not really encountered too many people. As I said, the beginning program was just students carrying items in a backpack and walking it around. So that was very pretty straightforward. So we're moving into more of a program where it's more organized. So we had the truck trike, which you have to train on in order to ride it with electric hybrid program. So most of the transport at this point is done by my students who are paid employees, and they do go through their kind of the training so that they don't get hurt in ergonomics. The students that are volunteers, they're more of the organizing and making sure that once those materials are at the stations, they put everything in and make sure that there are no other junk that ends up in the stations, and they remove those for us. So there's two separate groups that do that.
Okay. Well, I think that's all the questions that we have right now. Thank you, panel, for all your insights. Just a quick reminder that the recording of this webinar, as well as the PowerPoint slides, will be available on the Kirk website, which is curc3r.org. I want to mention the online resources that are also on our website. The University of Glasgow case study that Daniel mentioned, program website links, and all of our recent programs in the Kirk webinar series are available to listen to and view again at our website.
Hey, Larry.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Len.
Yes.
Sorry, can I jump in one more thing for your last question? For the upcycling. Sure. I just wanted to mention this is one of the things we're working on as far as that component is, you know, plastics right now are one of our biggest problems and issues that I can't do anything with. Even though municipalities and the recycling industry is collecting 3s through 7s, but a lot of it is going overseas, and who knows what's happening over there. Sometimes it's being recycled, sometimes it's not. So that's one of the things I think we want to look into is especially the amount of plastics that's generated, is how we can reuse it or be able to just upcycle. So one of the things with the new generation coming up with DIYs, we've been looking into seeing if we can take the plastics and regrind it ourselves on campus. And one of the possible avenues is to create either 3D filament for prints, which is one of the newest things coming out now. And what we've been told is if the industry keeps going the way it is that 3D printers will be very close to what people have at home versus, you know, everything else. So if we can come up with a reuse possibility with plastics, I think that's one of the things we can look into. And we have a couple of our students here who are working on that project of seeing if we can redo things either through 3D filament printing, and one of our professors is working on pavement research and see if they can use plastics as part of the pavement. So that's another one of those reuse opportunities we're hoping to look at as far as plastics.
Great, thanks for adding that, Lynn.
Sure.
Back to the slide at hand, upcoming Kirk webinars. Our next webinar will be April 13th, Building Support for Waste Reduction Programs, Strategies to Get Buy-in from Campus Stakeholders. And that will be the regular Thursday time, 1 to 2:30 p.m. June 8th, Recycling Collection Programs. July 13th, Education and Outreach Programs. September 14th, Measuring Impact of Recycling and Waste Reduction. November 9th, Food Organics, Waste Prevention and Recycling. So a full year of the free Kirk webinar series. For details and to register, go ahead and visit our website, www.curc3r.org. I want to announce our special bin opportunity partnership with Clean River Recycling. You may have received an email alert about this, but Clean River has a new customizable bin for up to 3 streams, and right now you can get an exclusive offer through Kirk for 25% off the list price, free shipping on a full pallet order. 4 design packages are available with several different options. The offer ends April 30th. So get full details and a promo code at our website. And just as a correction, it's not kirk.org, it's curc3r.org, the Flexi bin from Clean River. So ASHE, one of our promotional partners, wants us to announce the Sustainability Awards call for entries will be accepted through May 12th, and the Higher Education Sustainability Staffing Survey, there's still an opportunity to contribute to the biannual report. Input is needed from campus recycling or zero waste staff. The deadline is tomorrow, March 10th, and access to the survey is available through the ASHE homepage. Upcoming conferences, please save the date for the annual Campus Sustainability Conference put on by ASHE, which will be in San Antonio, Texas, October 15th through 18th. Early bird registration will begin in May. Kirk will be presenting our annual Kirk workshop in conjunction with the ASHE conference at Trinity University in San Antonio on Sunday, October 15th. It will be available for registration through the ASHE pre-conference program registration. And the Collegiate Sports Sustainability Summit will be at the University of Florida June 5th through 7th, 2017 in Gainesville, and the website to register is available there on the slide. Once again, I want to thank our webinar sponsor, Warpit, and our webinar partners, Keep America Beautiful and ASHE. And following this webinar, you should receive a prompt to complete a quick survey. We encourage you to take a minute to give us feedback on today's program. Once again, we want to thank Warpit for making today's webinar possible. And one last time, I want to thank our presenters, Stefania, Jessica, Lynn, and Daniel. Thank you for joining the program today. We'll see you for the next program on April 13th.